to occupy our city, uh, and you know, do what they're doing in D.C. because we got some kind of crime problem is what they're you know, the cause for it. And we know that that's not what this is about. I know that that's not what this is about. So as the elected person, the person who is a law enforcement, who gets their power from the people who decide to vote for that person, that is the exact opposite of taking troops in, right, and station them all around the city. To do what, right, would be my question. What are they gonna do here, right? What are the troops gonna do? So I could see if you had a major riot or something like that, and they were standing by and they wanted to stop people from you know, burning buildings down or something like that, you could use soldiers. But what are the soldiers gonna do in Baltimore City? What are they gonna come in here and do? So the president is actively threatening, we're gonna send soldiers into Baltimore City. I'm gonna do that to you, right? You know, I can tell you, right, that, you know, from what I know, right, soldiers don't know how to write traffic tickets, right? Soldiers don't know how to, you know, take a police report, right? Soldiers don't know how to, you know, differentiate between who lives in one spot and who doesn't live in the other spot, right? And so you're talking about like police reform and all the places that we've gone and are trying to go and do stuff. That is the opposite of that. And so, you know, for me, it's beyond offensive to have the president say, I'm gonna bring troops into Baltimore to quell some kind of crime craze that we have going on here. And again, how are they gonna do that? By pointing a gun at you, right? By making you feel unsafe in your own neighborhood? I'm not understanding it. Now let's talk about just economics, right? Let's say you don't buy what I just said. You throw it away. I think there should be troops here. Let's say that's in your mind, right? Let's look at how much it costs. It's $1 million a day to bring troops in DC. $1 million, right? For me to put 10 deputies out for a year, it's $1 million, right? So if they're here for a week, I could have 70 deputy sheriffs. 70, right? 70 deputy sheriffs on the street, I guarantee, would do more than have the National Guard here for a year. You know, 70 deputy sheriffs for 1 week in National Guard, right? 70 deputy sheriffs going around serving warrants on the most violent people, right? So I stood up with Ivan Bates, right? As he talked about, we dismantled some kind of drug ring that was going from Texas into Baltimore, selling cocaine and fentanyl. And all the people, which is going to lead into my next thing I'm going to talk about, all the people who were involved, unfortunately, were undocumented, right? And so we look at repeat violent offenders, right? And we look at gangs, and there are gangs, right, that are made up of people who have immigration issues. That is true, right? That is a fact, right? But what we don't need, right, along with the National Guard, is ICE agents with masks on, jumping out on people, right, who aren't repeat violent offenders.
Yeah.
Right? Going up to Home Depot up the street here and jumping out and people scattering, like, you know, like it's. I know when I walk down the street in uniform in certain neighborhoods and they're Latino little girls, right, and they see me in my sheriff uniform, excuse me, they're afraid of me, right? You see it in their eyes, right? You see it in the kids' eyes. What's happening with ICE in Baltimore City and around the country is despicable.
It is.
Right? It's wrong. And it's one of the most wrong things that have happened, you know, that I've ever seen when it comes to with the law enforcement stuff. No matter how you feel about immigration, no matter how you feel whether or not people should be in the country or not, there are ways to do things. And when we talk about mass deportations, what we're talking about is mass arrests, right? And we're talking about quotas, and we're talking about the way people are doing things, right? And so I've said this, I've started every community meeting with this or ended with it. You've got to see people who look like me talking about this kind of stuff, right? You have to. It's wrong, and people need to speak up about it. It's not okay what we're seeing, right? It's not okay that, you know, people in Patterson Park are getting jumped out on, or people up in, like I said, at the Home Depot. These are not repeat violent offenders. These are people who have been in the country sometimes for 20 or 30 years. Their husbands or wives are American citizens. Their children are American citizens, right? Some of them have applied to be American citizens. I get going after gangs. And like I said, I was just with the state's attorney, and we dismantled a criminal gang, right? And there are ways to do things, and there are ways not to do things. You know, we know about policing. I think we know about how policing can go crazy. Everything that we're trying to do to make policing better, the stuff that ICE is doing is undoing all that kind of stuff.
Facts.
You know, they're doing the exact opposite of everything that we don't want people to do. jumping out on people, detaining them without probable cause, right? Wearing masks, going after, trying to make an illusion that we're going after violent criminals when we're really going after people who are trying to do home repair and gardening and stuff like that, right? It's not okay. The way it's being done is not okay. And I'm not gonna sit quiet as the sheriff and just let it happen. So one of the things that's happened in Philadelphia, which that's where I grew up, in the city of Philadelphia, is they just had an article, the courthouse has become hunting ground for ICE. Right? That was the article in the Philadelphia Inquirer. And so the ICE agents were coming into the courthouse. Now, about 5 months ago, ICE agents came into the courthouse because someone called them, and I went bananas. I don't know if anyone saw. It's my opinion that ICE should never come into the courthouse, right? Ever, for any reason whatsoever, right? And the reason for that, and that's my public stated thing, and the reason for that is because, can you imagine, even if like you were the victim of a crime, someone, undocumented, hit you over the head and stole your property, and then you go to have a trial to get justice, and they snatch the person away and you never know what happened, right? Can you imagine if they were a witness, right? Yeah. Can you imagine if they were the person who was assaulted, right? What is it doing to a population that's afraid to use the courthouse, afraid to get a will, right? To come into the courthouse to get a will, afraid to go, get a business license. It's just not right. And so, like I said, it's something that's happening right now, and we got to talk about it. I think there has to be a conversation about how do we deal with criminal gangs and violence, and how do we deal with people who are undocumented in the country? Because they're two separate things, right? They're two separate things. Now, even with the violent criminals that we have, we don't throw masks on and do wild stuff like that, not anymore. No one wants that, right? So why are we not speaking up on this? I'm gonna speak up on it. So I'm just posing questions on this kind of stuff. It's important. You should never have ICE come into the courthouse. They should stop wearing masks. They should stop targeting people the way they're targeting that stuff. And, I'm evaluating how my people who are on federal task forces are gonna stay on federal task forces or they're gonna get pulled off, right? Because I can tell you, right, that the federal government could not survive if all the local agencies pulled their people, all the police agencies off the federal task forces and said, until you get ICE in line, we're not gonna participate. Right? They couldn't handle that.